I'm Michael Kuss with Russ Lacate. We are two Mets on the mic. Hey, Russ, we're going to look a little longer range than we normally do. Talk about the winter forecast. We get seasonal forecast requests all the time,
Yes.
but there's some pretty good indicators that give us at least some insight into what may come this winter. What do you see?
Yeah, and it's more about probability than about, actual, forecastable
Of
data day
course.
by day sort of thing. We do have a fairly well pronounced La Nina that's developing now in the equatorial Pacific. And, we want to boil it down and keep it as simple as we can that basically the surface water temperatures over the eastern Pacific, so along the coastline of South America, they're not quite as warm as they typically are. A lot of that warmer water is being built up closer to Indonesia, and it alters the overall flow of the atmospheric pattern at higher latitudes into the Gulf of Alaska. So La Nina here usually means slightly weaker winter systems in the Gulf of Alaska, so they don't push back the cold air. You end up with a really deep layer of cold air building in Alaska, Yukon, Western Canada, and it opens the door for more of that cold air to spill out towards the coastline here.
And what we can see frequently with a La Nina type pattern is the jet stream directing itself instead of farther down to the south, that winter pattern where we get the jet in southern Oregon through California. It's more toward the Pacific Northwest, the south coast of BC, and it's drawing some of those systems, although they're not all that strong all the time, out of the Gulf of Alaska. So we get ripple after ripple, not unlike the pattern we're seeing right now, but of course it's 5 to 7 degrees cooler than it is right now.
That's so accurate what you just said. Is it's a very similar pattern with these systems up and over, the Gulf of Alaska, carving down the coastline. You drop temperatures by 5 or 10 degrees, you start to usher in some of that colder air in our weather pattern here. And La Nina's, I guess it's maybe a 75% correlation that we tend to get many more cold episodes. That doesn't mean more snow, but if you combine the timing of those weather systems with the colder outbreaks, it's a pretty good bet that we'll have a little more snow here than we're typically seeing.
And that's a great point. It's about the probabilities here. And you talked about that right off the top, where it's a little more likely that we get greater amounts of precipitation, not necessarily event by event, but as a whole, and the temperatures are potentially slightly cooler. And that's not just for coastal BC, that's for the entire province and stretching into the prairies as well.
It really is. And I think the greater correlation between La Nina and the atmospheric patterns is the colder outbreaks in Western Canada, including the coastline of South BC and the lower mainland, not necessarily the snow. It's the supply of colder air. So, we'll just sort of watch it with the week by week weather patterns to see if there's a clash of the weather systems there.
Well, and this is the tough thing. People say, well, it's going to be so much snowy or so much wetter. Well, potential is definitely there, but if that jet dips a little bit farther to the south and the storm track moves into Oregon or southern Washington, we could see an incredibly dry stretch that lasts 3-4 weeks through the winter, and there goes all your snowfall.
I recall that too. Now that's, anecdotally speaking, I've been doing it in this district, been forecasting for about 30 years. And just anecdotally, La Nina, because of the fact that we can correlate it to possibly a higher likelihood of snow, it doesn't mean that there's more weather events or more snow necessarily. It just means watch out for the colder air. In fact, it's the El Nino patterns that steer in a much longer fetch, moisture-laden jet stream that can often lead to those rising freezing levels and sometimes more severe storms. That's not the case with La Nina.
Well, and let's just leave it at that. I would say that for the skiers amongst us, for the winter outdoor activity lovers, we'll keep our fingers crossed that this is one of those patterns where we see that La Nina pump in a few more systems and we get more snow events, especially in the mountains. We don't necessarily need them right in the city.
Yeah, I don't want them in the city, but if it turns out that way, I'll be putting new tires on the car before long.
Thanks so much, Russ. Great stuff.